Hello, everyone. Up next, we have Megha Bradley. This is a very special person in my life, and I am so grateful to have her here to share her with the rest of the Empower Women Veterans community. So, Megha, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here with you.
Great. So, I'm always happy to have you. So, we're here talking about the big idea to reality. And I started this Empower Women's Veterans journey before I got out of the military. But as I told you and everyone listening, there was a lot of road bumps and those kept getting in the way. And I could not figure out why I was not moving in my business. I had all the ambition, I had the knowledge, I knew I wanted the money. I just couldn't get my stuff together. What would you say to someone who was kind of in this transition state where they're trying to sort through everything when it comes to this big idea to reality?
The first thing I say is you've got to figure out what it is you actually want. And one of the hardest things I think it is when you've got all the stuff in the swirl and maybe you're in a reinvention process or you're trying to just sort out like what direction to actually go, is to first quiet yourself and go, which voice is mine and which voice is all the other people and things and interferences that have told me I'm supposed to want X, Y, and Z. So that's the very first thing I have people do is really just tune in and tune out all the outside conditioning that's told you what you're supposed to want.
Oh, that is
one of the things I always, and I got this from a previous mentor of mine, so it's not an original thought, but I have held on to it and it's changed my life. And that is that you always have the power and the right to decommit from something that's not working. And many times we commit to things verbally, emotionally, and, we'll tell people, well, I'm going to do this in 6 months, or I'm going to do this in 3 weeks. And do I have a moment to give an example of this? Even most recently. So I was been taking care of somebody in the last month, giving a lot of care to somebody, a friend of mine who had cancer and has cancer. And I blew out my circuits, just like the amount of energy it took to hold that space just exhausted me. And meanwhile, I had posted on Facebook and said, I'm going to do blah, blah, blah as this launch for my business. And I have a new program that I'm doing. And I had like this timeline that I've verbally committed to myself and to a bunch of other people. And then, of course, I come down with a sinus infection, which I thought, I just have some allergies. And the next thing you know, I'm like literally like sort of sliding down the hill. And I was so stressed out at first. And then I remembered I have the right to decommit from things. So as November 1st came around, which was the date when I made this commitment, I said, oh my gosh, now I'm going to lose face. I have to drag myself to do this thing. And instead I went, no, you don't. No, you don't. So instead I went on and said, I'm under the weather. And rather than pushing myself, because I know how vitally important my health is, I'm going to pick that back up when I'm better. And then this like giant weight lifted off my shoulders and I went and took a nap. So I think a lot of times we're just so tired, like we could just go take a nap. Life has made us tired because we said yes, and then we think we have to do it. But it's okay to say, I said yes, and now I'm saying no.
Yes. Yeah, I think the and in that statement is also a big thing, because even though the military trains us to think of multiple ways of solving things, it's still under the extreme pressure that, like, if the answer is no, if I fail, what's the worst case scenario? And it's usually that someone will die.
We almost pretend like that's that level of life and death, because of course you're taught that. And that's really the whole point, right? But then when you step outside of that construct, and just because your mom wants you to show up for Thanksgiving, and maybe you're like, no, but then you're like, but will you die? Well, and some people push themselves, and then they get there and they're resentful. And then it's like, well, yeah, I'm here for Thanksgiving because I had to be. It's like, no, you don't have to be anywhere. But obligation and burdensome obligation is how I like that distinction of burdensome obligation. We a lot of times will do things out of obligation, but if there's a burden on top of it, then we build bitterness out of it.
Yeah, that That is such a poignant point.
And it's always so lovely to stand on this side of it when we are a stand in our purpose, whatever our purpose is. And mine is watching, my mentees and my students be able to rise up into their purpose, because, we are one person in and of ourselves, right? Like, we can, and I've been dealing with this again and helping this friend of mine who is facing this cancer journey. And, you realize, like, this is one little life and it could burn out. But when we begin to ripple our service, whatever our big service is, whatever that big calling is, and really become obedient to that energy of that calling, then it's like I know that my service in the world pays forward into the lives of others that I will never know. And that, by all blessings of showing up here and for you stepping into that work, and especially into your community that you so well know the patterns and the circumstances and the cycles that they personally experience, understanding that and then being able to be a force of transformation inside of that is massive. So thank you for living into your purpose. The fact that we are women of color, and there is so much victim conversation that sits inside of, and I know there's some people who are like, I can't believe you actually said that, right? But the thing is that there's a choice in saying, I own how I show up, how I respond, how I train the people around me, regardless of whatever their particular denomination, circumstance, race, whatever. I'm responsible for the reaction and the response based on who I show up as and what I'll allow to be in the room with me.
What is the biggest thing you wish you knew starting this business that you could go back in time and tell baby entrepreneur Megha back in the day, before getting to this point where you have helped hundreds of people feel better and within themselves?
So maybe someone will listen to this. Don't try to please everybody. You are not for everybody. You don't need everybody. And you don't need to price yourself like you're for everybody. And therefore, that is, I think, one of the scariest things, especially when we're a baby entrepreneur or we're just launching a business, or even if we're working for a corporation and we're trying to make sure that we get accepted. And it also works in dating. It works in relationships too. It goes back to that shrink yourself inside the box so that everybody wants what's in the box. And the truth of the matter is that if I look back and if I would have listened to this, thank God I finally got a coach that somehow or another, what they said, which the other coaches had also told me, but it took whatever saturation point for it to be like, oh, that's the most amazing thought ever. And it was that it's okay to go narrow. You can go narrow and you can be specific and you can be a niche product, a niche service, a niche expert. What we said as an intention ends up manifesting in our world. So nothing is a surprise. It's just the timing we may not know. And so I think that's exactly it. Is you said that so well, though. It's like you can still have a generalist circumstance, but a specificity that makes you valuable to the people that can
openness
appreciate
you have. And I'm hoping that radiates out to the right people who want to come to you and continue the conversation. If that is the case, which I know it will be, how can they get in touch with you?
The best way is to go to my website. It's Megha, MEGHA, success.com. Go up in the upper corner, click the link to do a 15-minute catalyst call with me, because you can show up quite literally. The best conversations come with me where people show up and they're like, I really don't know what I want to ask you. And I'll be like, let me ask you a question and we'll get down into it. And then, like, I would say, use whatever's come up in this conversation or anywhere else in this summit, something that's shown up as oh my gosh, I feel so stuck about this, or I'm afraid to let this go. Bring a fear to me. Show up and click that button on my website, Megha, MEGHA, success.com, and show up with a fear that you're afraid of moving forward. And I will help you get bolder.
Just in case you didn't get it, the link is on this page. And we will continue this conversation at another time, Megha. Thank you so, so much.
Thank
Always
you.
a pleasure to have you.